Hello and welcome to the demonstrational video on the 2006 Autosleeper Ford Duetto. We'll run around the outside of the vehicle and the controls there, and then we'll move on to the inside. So starting with the bonnet catch on this, it's actually the key that opens the bonnet up. So you need the key into the front here, turn it left, and then you need to turn it right and lift the bonnet at the same time. So under the bonnet then we have brake fluid level, oil dipstick. To fill the oil, it's this here. If you ever need to jump start the vehicle, you need to put the positive terminal onto this here, and then find an earth. There usually is an earth tab on these. So yeah, to earth this, I would earth it onto the chassis, just down there. So anything that's solid metal for the earth. You have coolant here for the radiator, and your washer fluid is filled there. So working on around the vehicle then, you've got your fuel filler here. You do need the key for that, so that's where you fill up the fuel. Just inside the door here we've got the chassis plate. Don't think it shows you your fuel, your tyre pressures on there, but the tyre pressures are on the actual tyres themselves. Fire extinguisher just there as well. The step, it literally just pulls out and pushes back in. Just make sure that's put back in when you set off. Next one along is your gas locker. Now with this, I think the biggest you're going to get in there is a 3.5 kilogram. You will need a flexible hose that comes off this regulator. So this regulator is an inline regulator, so you don't need to put anything on top of the bottle. You just connect a flexible hose, which I can get here, that goes onto here, and then the flexible hose goes onto the top of your gas bottle, and then there's a tap on top of your gas bottle that you turn on and off to get the gas supply into your motor. Next one along is your toilet cassette. So all the toilet waste goes down the toilet, ends up in this cassette. To empty this, you push this tab down here and slide this out. Now you need to put the toilet chemical into this, which we have here. The blue chemical goes into here. So you slide this back, open up the cassette, pour the chemical into it, and that's how you fill it. You know, prime it. You pour a little bit of the chemical into the bottom with a little bit of water, and that's how you prime it. To empty it, so you push that back. In order to empty it, you just slide this nozzle across like that, unscrew the cap. Just difficult with one hand, so unscrew that cap and pour away the liquid out of that nozzle. That nozzle will be pointing fully forward. As you're doing so, push this in to let air in as the liquid is coming out. So that's how you empty it, and then, as I say, put the toilet chemical into this, and then it's ready to use again. This toilet system uses a flush system, which needs to be filled. So this nozzle here, draw that across like that, unscrew this cap, and pour some of the pink chemical into this here, and also fill it full of water. Just fill it until it literally, you can see it's full here. This will need emptying. It's very important that you empty this. If you don't empty it in winter, there's liquid in there, it can freeze, it will start to expand and damage the tank. So in order to get all the water out of here, firstly open this nozzle here, and that will allow the excess to pour out of this funnel. It also has a level indicator just here to show you how much water is in that flush system, but that's what needs emptying. So in order to do that, unclip it from there and simply let that pour away like that. To replace that, it just goes back into the clip, and that little funnel on the end goes into the top. Put the toilet chemical cassette back in. Wrong way. It just slides in like so, and then these chemicals are stored in the cassette housing. So moving on around the back, we do have a reversing camera. It can be permanently on, just allows you to see what's going on behind you. These two vents here are for the fridge. What it does is it draws cool air in at the bottom and expels it at the top. On a day like this, obviously you wouldn't think it need cooling, but in summer the fridge does heat up, so it needs that capacity to cool. To fill your fresh water tank, so everything that you're going to use inside the motorhome, there's a water tank for that, and you fill that just by opening this up. There is a key for that, just like a fuel filler, and then fill that up until it literally pours out with a hose pipe. Next one along is the vent for the boiler system. So it vents, and you're going to use it on gas, it vents its exhaust gases out of this vent here. This does have a weather cover on it at the moment. That does need to be removed in order for it to vent properly, and to do that you push on there and peel back on this. So that's how it must look in order for the boiler to vent. This is where the mains electric comes in. You will need a mains cable for that, and it just slots into there. Underneath there, there's an exhaust for the heating. So the heating on this motorhome is diesel, and it needs to exhaust its diesel fumes, and that's where the exhaust diesel will be expelled from that nozzle there. So now we're inside the motorhome. This model's got a swivel seat on the passenger side, and in order to swivel that around, you just get this lever here. You can see that moves that way like that, and turn the seat around like so. And then you've got your rear facing captain's chair. We'll come to the bed makeup in a second, but basically what happens is this section here pulls forward via this tab here. So you push that down and this all extends out to meet this. And then the same thing happens on the other side. You push that tab down there, and then this section extends out to meet this here, and then you've got this area as your bed area. I'll make that up right at the very end, and then you can see how that looks when it's made up. This forward facing seat here has got a seat belt, and that's just here, and then there'll be a corresponding location point mounted just down here. I think that's tucked away underneath the seat. So that's how the bed arrangement works, and I'll make that up at the end. So this long bench seat here, the boiler, the hot water boiler, is housed underneath here. So basically lift up this bench seat like so, take this panel out, and that reveals the boiler and the workings for the boiler. There is a drain required for this. So basically what this here is, you can see that it's 10 litres, and that is the hot water boiler. So what you do when you first connect up to water and you put water in the vehicle, so when you first put water into the motorhome via the filler that I showed you outside, basically what you need to do is open up the taps in the kitchen and in the bathroom, and basically wait until you get a pure flow of water coming out of those taps. And what you're then doing is pulling water through this red and blue pipe on hot, so you need to open up your hot and cold water on that tap there. And basically what you're doing is pulling the water through these two pipes here, filling up that boiler, and then the water will eventually end up coming out of your tap. And so you need to wait until you get that pure flow of water coming out of that tap. Otherwise, you're just going to switch your boiler on and it'll be heating thin air. So you need to ensure that that is full of water. Being a container full of water, if it freezes in there, it will expand, it will crack that boiler, which is an expensive repair. That yellow tab, which is there, is the drain down valve for the boiler. So that is now in the closed position, meaning it will retain its water. If you lift it up into the horizontal position, like that, then that will allow the water that is in the boiler to drop out onto the floor underneath the motorhome. That's the diesel heater, which I'll come to the controls for in a second. And that's where the vent comes out for the warm air. You've got a charger unit just housed there, and that deals with charging up your leisure battery, but you shouldn't really need to worry about that. The controls for that boiler are just here, and there'll be a separate one for the electric, I think, but this deals with the gas. So basically you've got off here, and then that switches it on. The green light indicates that the boiler has lit. In a second you'll see a red light to tell you that the boiler has failed to ignite. That is because we don't have any gas connected, and as you can see, that's happened there. When you first put the gas bottles on, you've got to wait for the gas to go through the pipework and eventually reach the boiler in order for it to ignite. So you may have to do this process 2 or 3 times before the gas will reach the boiler. So it's trying to ignite. We've got no gas connected at the moment, so obviously it will go to fail again. Now when you do connect the gas, you've got to wait for that to happen, so you may have to do that maybe 3 or 4 times. And then this selects your temperature. If it was me, I'd just leave it on the hottest setting, which is 70, and then mix it with the cold water so that you can have more warm water. Okay, so that's the controls for the gas boiler. So this is dealing with your hot water. If you're off grid and you're not on site where you've got electric, then heat your water on gas. If you need to heat it on electric when you are on site and your electric is free, then there's a little button just underneath here, which is the black one just there, and that switches the boiler onto electric. That is a circuit breaker, as you would see at home, like a domestic circuit breaker. If there's a problem with any of the mains electric appliances, then these grey tabs will trip down to the lower position. So there's 3 tabs there. They all need to be in the upmost position. They are just gas taps to isolate each individual gas appliance. I wouldn't worry about those unless you've got a problem with an individual gas appliance. Dealing with the heating on gas, if you're off site and you haven't got electric, then obviously heat your water on gas. If you want to heat it on electric, the control for that is just there, that black switch. So switch that on and it'll heat your water on electric. That's a circuit breaker, like a domestic circuit breaker at home. Those grey tabs need to be pointed in the up position. And then those are just taps for the gas, which will isolate an individual gas appliance. I wouldn't worry about those unless you've got a problem with a gas appliance. So moving on up to the cooking facilities, it's just a 3-burner gas hob controlled on these knobs here, and yeah, your ignition switch is just there. You've got grill and oven there, which are operated on gas. You've got your sink here. This cover just folds over like so, and then is retained on this clip just here. Your controls for the this is the main control panel basically. So that is the master switch. It switches everything off, so you won't get anything running on 12 volt without that being switched on. You can select your habitation battery or your vehicle battery. Only use the vehicle battery if your habitation battery is flat and in emergencies and you need to maybe switch the lights on or run the pump, for example, because if you flatten your habitation battery and your vehicle battery, you're in trouble. So you can see on this dial here what level your batteries are. So if you click battery, you can see that the habitation battery is in good condition. If you select this over to the vehicle battery and test, you can see both batteries are in good condition. So I'll leave that on the habitation. This will tell you about your water situation. So if you press this, then that will tell you if you have any water in the motorhome, which we don't at the moment. In order to get water from the fresh water tank through all the pipe work which I showed you in the boiler and eventually out of your tap, you need the pump switched on, and that's done via this switch here. Don't run the pump dry. In other words, make sure that there's water in the system and you've primed the pipes so that there's no air in the pipes and you're getting this water through your tap. Otherwise the pump will run hot and eventually burn out. That's just a simple light switch that switches all the individual lights on around the motorhome, which can be switched individually by themselves. You've got a 12 volt socket here and a mains 240 volt socket, so obviously you need to be plugged in order for that to work. Underneath that we have the fridge. Now this is a 3-way fridge. I'll just adjust my position so I can show you. Okay, so in order to open the fridge, that locks it, and then you press this little green tab upwards like that, and that opens it. So that's your security lock. If you're going to leave it for any length of time, you want air to circulate around inside the fridge so that it doesn't become stagnant, then there's 2 positions, so you can leave the door slightly ajar, and you can see that if you put that pin into that inner receptacle there, it'll keep the fridge slightly open. To run the fridge on gas, so i.e. if you are not on site and you're off grid and you want it to run on gas, then simply turn this round to the gas here, switch that so that it ignites. You need to keep this pressed in and line up the picture of the gas with the arrow. Wait until that stops flashing and then you know that it's ignited. Obviously it won't ignite now because we haven't got any gas connected, but when that stops flashing you know that the fridge is ignited. Then you can slowly release this catch here and let that come out. If this starts flashing again, then you know that it hasn't ignited, so then you need to push that back in, and it's like the thermocouple on a gas hob. This is your temperature control here, and you're controlling it by lining it up with that arrow there. So 1 being the warmest, so the fridge won't work as hard. You don't want the fridge to work really hard in winter, but in summer, because of the ambient temperature, then if it's a really hot day you want to be turning that around to 5. On electric, you need to, so if you want to run the fridge on mains electric, you press this button here, that will ignite. Now we're not plugged into mains electric, so that hasn't ignited. And then similarly, this is your temperature control if you're going to run the fridge on electric. It will also run on 12 volt, but will only do so when the engine is running, so it comes off the engine alternator, and in order to select that power source you press that red button in there, which will illuminate. It will only keep the fridge cold, it won't get the fridge cold, it's just really to keep it cool as you're travelling. So if you're going to set off on a long journey, get it cold on the electric first and then switch over to this 12 volt system here. I just neglected to show you this control here, which is the actual heating of the motorhome. So in order to switch that on, you press the top button there, which indicates heat. This is your temperature control, so you select your desired temperature. That switches it off, and if you just want to circulate the fan with no heating, then just press that button. And again, that switches it off. So moving on to the washroom then, if you open the washroom door, on the inside of that, it's got this blanking section here which will draw across, and then you just locate that lock into that receptacle there, and it will blank off the back section of the motorhome, so if you want to get changed, if you've got anybody guests in the van with you. So this is the toilet section, which we talked about with the cassette outside. So in order to use the toilet then, you just lift the lid, and then to open the valve, which is directly connected to the cassette which I showed you outside, you turn this nozzle here, and then the flush is done by pressing this down. Don't travel with that blade open, and when I say the blade, it's this, you're turning this back round to close it. I don't think you can see that. So that must be fully closed, otherwise the liquid inside this toilet cassette will be swilling around, and you don't want that. This is a toilet roll holder, And this is an indication to tell you when the cassette is becoming full. So in the green, it's empty, and then it will eventually slide over to the red section. Your sink is housed away like that, and then your taps are here. And again, just going back to priming the water system, you need to make sure that there's a pure flow of water coming out of these taps here, as well as your shower head, which is just there. So with the shower, when you're using the shower, draw this curtain around to protect your door when it's closed. I would use that shower just in a hand operation, you know, rather than having it standing underneath it, and then you can direct the water and everything isn't getting wet down here. Just coming back to the front of the motorhome, there's two sections here that the legs go into for the tables, so you can have the tables in two different positions. The legs for those tables are in the wardrobe, which is just here, so you take those out, drop a leg into that receptacle there, you take the black cap off, and then the tables are stored just behind this forward facing seat. So I'll make the bed up now, and then you can see how that looks when it's made up. Okay, so simply by pressing the button on the side of this forward facing seat here, you push that, drop the cushions into the center, and then the same again, there's a little catch underneath this side facing bench seat, and release that and draw this across, and that's the bed. So you'll be sleeping that way. There's further cushions there. If the front passenger seat is swiveled around, those cushions can be put into there just to make a slightly bigger bed. Just notice there is actually a further table just housed behind that side facing seat, as well as there being a larger one just here behind the forward facing seat. Just a final thing, and it's a really important one to know about and remember, when you're filling up the water tanks on these, if you're not going to leave it, if you're not going to be using it and you're going to leave it and it's really cold weather, it's important to drain these tanks thoroughly. So the main drain down points are the boiler, which was the yellow tab which I showed you in there, the toilet cassette here, which I showed you how to drain down from that pipe. Just underneath here there's a waste, so that's your waste water, and there's just a tap on the end of that. Around the other side of the motorhome, so this is we're on this side here, around the other side of the motorhome there's one with a blue tap on it, and that is the fresh water tank. So they're the main drain down points. So I hope that is helpful. That concludes the video. If you've got any questions that you want me to answer prior to collection, I'm happy to do so, or I can do those on the day that you actually collect, and I look forward to seeing you on the day that you collect your new motorhome.